Greetings, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of the Third Podcast. This is episode number 5. And in today's episode, we're talking about money. We're talking about finances. We're talking about getting money, saving money, retaining money, especially in today's society where money seems to be coming and going so quickly. We got inflation, gas prices are through the roof, food costs are going up, travel costs are going up, our lives are getting a little bit tighter. And if you ain't out here getting this paper, if you ain't out here hustling, if your job isn't giving you raises and increases, life has become a little bit tougher. So before we get into it, I'm going to bring in my co-hosts, see how they're doing. We're going to start with the lovely Kai. Kai, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm maintaining. I just got back from vacation, and I was out in Denver. Had a good time with my wife. It was good. It
Nice.
was a nice city. Yeah,
Very nice. That's always good when you can get away from everything. And I know you work like 25,000 jobs. So the fact that you said you were able to get away and just spend time with your wife, I think that's awesome. Celebrate Black
absolutely.
love. Yes, yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Thank you. It was amazing. It was good to get away from our kids. Like, even though we love our kids, but that
Uh-huh.
disconnect, that break, oh man, it was definitely needed. It was definitely needed. However, we
Yeah,
get
good.
that itch when you start missing them. It's like day 2. It's
Uh-huh.
like, oh, I miss the
Yeah.
kids. Then you get home and you realize, dang, we should have stayed extra day. So
Just right.
it's like one of
That's
those things.
awesome.
It's a love hate
Yeah,
thing.
well, I'm glad you guys are able to get away. And I know we're going right back to work,
Yeah.
right into the thick of it with this conversation tonight. So I'm really looking forward to what you're bringing to the table, what Aaron's going to be bringing to the table, because I know he's going to be breaking a lot of stuff down
Right.
as far as what's happening in our economy and how that's going to impact us, especially the Black community. But most
Mm.
importantly, we're going to be talking about how we can prepare. And that's so crucial. I think a lot of times we talk about the issues that we're facing and we don't have like hard solutions we can really start to take action on. But we're definitely changing that with this podcast and with this conversation tonight.
Absolutely. So you brought him up. Let's bring him in. Hey, Aaron, what's up, man? How are you doing? Our financial advisor.
Oh, I'm doing well, doing well. But I will say, Brandon, I get tired of my kids on day 9. So you need to catch up, bro. Because I only want to see them fools no more. Like, we need to stay 2 months longer. Oh, man.
Oh man. Well, yeah, I'll get there. I'll get there at some point. I got little ones though. So you got big grown men.
I know you got a
You know,
baby
they
baby.
can they
Shout
can
out to
fight
baby
you and
girl.
stuff.
Yeah, shout out to baby girl. There we go. But no, I'm
Cool.
excited to start this conversation. I think that this is something obviously, unless somebody hasn't been paying attention to the news, there's something going on with liquidity, money, globally. And obviously they say when the United States catches a cold, Black people, we get the flu and we get really, really sick. And so we really need to start discussing, number one, how these things occur, the positions we're supposed to be helping put our families in long term, and then most importantly, solutions. How can we combat this? Because as Mr. Fuller says, this is part of the war, and this is one of the 9 areas of activity, economics, which is what are you doing with your time and energy. So I'm excited to get started. I'm super excited.
All right, man. Lead us. I mean, you already kind of touched on it with Mr. Fuller. You know, for folks who are not familiar, Mr. Fuller has the 9 areas of people activity: economics, entertainment, labor law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And all those areas are interconnected. Everything that we do in our lives plays some role in one of those areas. And when we have injustice or we have adversity or we have things that, knock us off our square, so to say, in any one of those areas, the other areas are affected. So when it comes down to finances, it's one of the things that is connected to almost everything we do. When we have inflation, it affects how we feed our children, how we feed ourselves. It affects where we live. Sometimes people get priced out of where they live. It affects what schools, your kids go to, because you can get priced out of one neighborhood and your kids gonna go to a different
Absolutely.
school.
Yeah,
It affects if your roads get plowed or your trash gets picked up. Like this, there are literally things that are impacted by finance that we don't always think about, but that day to day, because we always think about our own personal finances, but
right.
it's global. It's a societal thing that interplays off of one another. So I wanted to just throw that piece in there before we got started. But let's go ahead, Aaron, lead us in the conversation.
Fantastic. Also, listen, I can tell y'all directly, inflation has affected me because I was borderline. I haven't gone to the grocery store to buy like bulk groceries maybe in a year and a half. And I got my Instacart order today, and that bag of chicken was $16.79. I said, this is some foolishness. Like the wings. Woo. I said, time out. You know, because I bake them. I fry some okra. That's what Kyle was doing. I got my okra going. And but no, like literally, we're seeing this stuff. And so really the first article I want to bring up is obviously, actually, before I start there, I just want to start the conversation with the conversation that I had with the Black family on Saturday. I was at a barbecue and a cookout, and a buddy of mine, we're just sitting around talking, and his dad and his brother there, older gentlemen, and they were sitting there, and all of it is family land. And I just, I like to start to get into the brain. I said, man, let me ask you a question. How long has this land been in your family? And he said, Aaron, I don't even know. He said, it's a great granddaddy. He said, we had no idea. But I said, has it ever been sold? He said, the goal is for everybody to keep it in the family. And that's one of the things that we can do. That's basically just a start. We're going to talk about housing, but owning things and then not giving it up for a quick dollar. Because I'm sure in that, I'd probably say 100 plus years of that family owning those acres, owning those lots, building those properties, there were opportunities to sell and buy things and go out there and get trinkets. But that family said no. And to this day, not only is that land worth more money, but more importantly, it still provides quality housing for that family. The grandkids come over there, the cousins, the nephews, there's always a place to stay. So sometimes in a micro level, we always want to just think about things like this land is worth this much more money, but that property is worth more to the family because it literally provides housing. And so I want you to bring up that article, Brandon, because I think this is a great segue into it, where we start to just basically talk about the rising rents currently in America. I'm a mortgage advisor, so I am going to be talking some different mortgage things on here. So I'll give my NMLS number, 239638. I am licensed. I have to pay to maintain my license every year. So I'm not giving out shade room advice. So, but what we're talking about is U.S. rents, U.S. rent prices rising 4 times faster than income. Just that right there. The rent is rising faster than income. And I talk to clients every single day. I can even go through maybe 5 conversations I've had within the last 90 days. Had a client came in and thinking about purchasing a property to get pre-approved. They said, Aaron, we're not sure if we want to renew our lease. Our rent has gone from $1,350 to $1,900. Aaron, my rent has gone from $1,100 to $1,600. Aaron, my rent has gone from $2,000 to $2,695. These are real conversations that I'm having with people. And when you start to look at this, housing is just the basic need. Everybody has to find a place to live. Right. Everybody. And when we start to see this, the other thing we need to think about, and we talked about this a few episodes ago, why it's so important for us not only to focus on housing, but also income. Because are we also involved in industries to where incomes are not rising? We talked about this a few weeks ago, but Black families in this country at one point were actually able to successfully work in a service sector or work blue collar jobs and be able to put kids through college and maintain a different standards of life, even if it's a low or middle class life. That is no longer the case anymore. A lot of people are actually currently in poverty, and those service jobs are becoming very, very, very number one, people don't even want to work the service jobs anymore. Let's be real. Right. They don't even want to go to the service jobs anymore. You're not paying enough. So now all those business owners are feeling contracted. So I just wanted to start there. And this is the problem that people are not seeing. And this is something that we definitely want to start with. I mean, obviously, I can talk about this a little bit more. There's some other things in this article I want to go through, but I want to kind of get you guys' thoughts about what are some of the issues that we just have, even in your local market with housing and incomes, and what are the things we're seeing over there?
What are you seeing, Kai?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing an increase in rent prices here in Charlotte. We were talking to a few families that are in the complex that we live in, and they were saying that some of their family are kind of stuck, in which they don't have the means to move into a different apartment. maybe one that is not as expensive, but they don't have enough money to do the actual move because of the cost of the they're kind of maxed out where they're living, where they're currently living in their unit. So that's concerning because even where we are right now, the price of rent is going to go up. So what happens if you can't afford to move? Number one, the moving expense, but also if you are going to move, most likely you're going to pay a higher rent amount.
Absolutely.
So a lot of times, and oftentimes our community are just getting priced out of, as you said, the basic need for housing. And this is in addition to here in Charlotte, we're seeing soaring housing prices. So it's like, so where am I supposed to live if I can't afford rent? I can't afford to compete with other families or whoever is involved with buying up these single family homes. How am I supposed to be able to provide a house for my family? So, and that's, if that's something that you're struggling with, that's a huge stressor. That's in addition to, as we're going to be talking about food prices and gas prices, just the basic need to make sure that your family has a safe place to live. That is extremely concerning, especially for our community.
Yeah. Before Brandon goes, I just want to add one thing, and this is something that people don't talk about. Not only are rents going up, but for some people, rents are going up in places where they don't even want to be there. I need people to think about that. You are living in a place. So let's think about a family, Kai, that you even might be the people you were just talking to. Let's say they wanted to move into another school district to get their kids into a different school district. Well, not only is it more expensive to live where they are right now, it's also going to be more expensive for them to go to another school district. So the economic impacts that Brandon talked about earlier, it affects your education, it affects your lifestyle, it affects your health. What happens when people start to have, Brandon knows this, when people start to have money issues, it affects the number one thing, their mental health. They start behaving erratically, they start making very poor decisions. What happens when your kids are not getting a level of quality education? And it's literally because you can't afford to move them to another area or a different part of town. So now you're literally economically settling in the area that you're in. So these things have more to do with lifestyle than just money and rent prices going up. I just wanted to add that, Brandon. Okay?
For sure.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. And unfortunately, what's going to happen with inflation is you're going to start to see irrational behavior show up in many different areas. So people are going to try to find ways to make that money. And we are in a gig economy. I think Black folks have been in a gig economy since the 70s. But now that it's a thing where you can drive Uber and you can do DoorDash and you can do Instacart and all that, the rest of the world has caught up to what we've already considered to be hustling. But see, our problem is we don't have a lot of foresight as a collective group of people. So we don't realize that we're also competing against automation, computers, technology. We're competing against people who speak more languages than we do, which is an advantage, but we act like it isn't, but it is. And we also are competing with people who cost a lot. Their cost of labor is a lot cheaper than ours, which means that they're a lot more attractive to hire because you don't need to pay them as much. And Black folks don't think about that. We think from a victim position, as I always talk about and get in trouble. And when we think from a victim position, we also have a level of entitlement, which is part of our American identity. Somebody owes us something. And unfortunately, in this world, you got to get how you live, and the streets got to eat. And that's what we're noticing right now. So even this article, it kind of hurts my soul because we see this sister who's beautiful, just smiling, and this ain't nothing to damn smile about. This is some serious stuff, and I don't think we know how serious it is.
It is.
But hey, we don't pick the stock photos for the articles. They do. But I'm like, why is this sister smiling? This ain't a good thing. She don't understand what's about to happen in her life.
Yeah, and just in reference to those rents, and the more give you guys just a real life example. I'm in the mortgage business, so obviously, if housing, and we're going to talk about this a little bit in our next slide, but housing is starting to slow down a little bit to where prices in different areas are inflated. We saw there was an article early in the year about I think Better.com CEO laid off 4,000 people over Zoom, fired people over Zoom. The company, I know companies that I'm familiar with in my local area laying off employees because in the mortgage business, it's all based upon volume. When volume goes down, first hired, last fired. And so those are different things that we just have to deal with. And the rent prices in conjunction with housing prices, and I'll talk a little bit about this. One of the ways that you can protect yourself from having rent increases is getting a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. And I always try to explain to clients, buying the house is more important than the price at many, many times. If you buy it right, which means you have a budget, you know what you can afford. It doesn't matter if the house is $200,000 today or if it went up to $350,000. If you can afford it, this is something that you really need to think about. Think about these conversations. And I just had this conversation. I was talking to one of these guys that I was telling you about from the beginning, and I asked him. I said, I like to get in people's lunch boxes because the lunch boxes will start to tell you exactly what the real deal is. I said, man, let me ask you a question. How much you buy this house for? He said, I bought this house in 1975 for $22,000. And I said, when you start to have those conversations, that was a generation of people that lived and they stayed in places. They lived and they stayed. But the most important thing about that is that different inflation was in the 70s. There was a stock market crash in the 80s. We had a housing crisis in the 90s. I was in the business for a housing crisis in 2005, 2008, and we just went through another recession a few years ago with the pandemic and everything that we just went through. But he had a home and he owned it and he kept it. And just some of those old school lessons from our elders are things that we can really, really learn from, because we become a society that likes to jump. This is a time for stability. This is a time for family. And this is a time for people to make really, really good decisions. I've been talking to my clients about, if you're thinking about buying a house, you can't think in 3 years, I'm going to turn around and sell this thing for a bunch of money. That's not a plan. That's a wish. That's hope. You have to see yourself in this property for 7 to 10 years, because that's typically when the market starts to adjust a little bit. So you're going to see this. But as long as your mortgage payment is this, you'll be okay. So super important that people just start to pay attention to this. I was renting an apartment a couple years ago. They raised that sucker up, I think, $1,400 a month, and I was only paying $900. And this is real. This is real life examples before I started purchasing property again. But these are real life examples, and families need to be prepared. They need to get serious about this stuff, because this is economic warfare. And if we don't have the skills and we don't have the budgets and we're not being direct and intentional about making these decisions, life gets hard, and it affects Black Americans harder than everybody else. And that's also a fact that we need to talk about, is that this affects us bad. And it's okay. But we need to talk about the fact that this is going to affect us. And we need long-term thinking. So just wanted to.
Yeah. Question for you, Aaron. So when you're talking about 2005, 2008, when we had the housing crash at that point. So if people right now are kind of like waiting on the sidelines to purchase, and maybe they're saying, what goes up must come down. So we're just waiting for another crash to happen now with these housing prices to start to go down. Is that something that you foresee happening, or is this kind of a different paradigm that we're in, that where we are right now, the prices will only continue to go up, or if they do go down, it will be slightly not what we kind of have seen in previous years?
I think we're going to see, that's a great question, Kyle. I think we're going to see market correction. That's the better word, which is that we're going to see an adjustment for prices to possibly go downward. But that's what's necessary, because this level of appreciation, just using the regular logical brain, is not sustainable. I literally would say to my clients, let me ask you a question. After, if they're thinking about what's the market going to do, I say, with this level of appreciation, you paid $350 for this house. Would you buy this house in 5 years for $550,000? They say no. I say, well, there's your answer. There's your answer. No, it's not. It's not sustainable. So you're going to see an adjustment in the market. Now, with those adjustments, you have peaks and rises. You have dips. Interest rates will probably begin to improve, because the government is rising rates and securities because they had to. There was more liquidity put into the market. I mean, I think we use this stat all the time, but I just have to throw it out there and have people remember. The majority of the money that was printed in the United States of America that was printed, 40% of it was printed during the pandemic. Of all the money in the history of the United States, in the history of the country, was printed during the pandemic. So all the PPP, everything y'all name it, the unemployment, all that money was put. So they put so much liquidity into the market, but you can't keep doing that. It's like propping up a house that's built on sand. Eventually, you have to do certain monetary policy. That's one thing we need to learn about, which is to get things adjusted. Now, if you have a plan, knowing that they're going to do this, you get into a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. You possibly even purchase a property, even though prices are high. People are saying, oh my gosh, Aaron, mortgage rates are like 5%. Well, do you know we did have 3% rates for like a 2-year period of time? That wasn't normal. The other times people were getting rates of between 4 and 6%. That's what a normal market was. So it's also adjusting our mindsets for the shift that has to happen. If you can still get in, you have to understand this might dip. And that's with anything. It might go down. So what? But guess what's going to go up? Your rent.
Yeah.
Period. End of story. Your rent. This is supply and demand. And if I have, like Kai said, if Kai's got 30,000 people standing at the door to rent outside that development, and there's not another quality of places that's around there, guess what them people gonna do? Pay. And it's non-negotiable. You're not going in there saying, well, I only got $1,500. Buy. This is $2,000. Well, y'all accept what? Buy. This is $2,000. And the people are going to come into those areas and they will figure out ways to pay. What you have to do is combat that. If you know that that's the game, what can I do? How do I protect myself? So,
which takes budgeting and planning and sacrifice and a lot of things that we have not been taught from an early age in order to maintain. Yeah,
absolutely.
We definitely will have to change. That would be a definite change, I should say, to standard of living. I think what you said, Brandon, of course, is budgeting, having those conversations with whoever you live with about your budget. And I know that sometimes we don't want to tell other people about our money situation if you live with that person, but now is definitely not the time. If you're going to live with someone, whether it's a roommate or some type of domestic partnership or husband, wife, whatever it is, you have to be honest about where you are, the debts that you have. If there's credit card debt, student loan, whatever is outstanding, you have to definitely put all that on the table so that way you can make sure that you can live in this new America that's being created.
Listen, we have to be real about some of this stuff. I know families, I know people personally to where some of the best things that happened to them over the last 4 or 5 years was the fact that they were able to live with a family member and save up some money and then go out there and either purchase a property or find their own place. Like this whole mentality that we have that says that we can't have these economic downturns in our own lives professionally and personally, and we're trying to hide all of this stuff from happening. I see this happening culturally. Listen, y'all, I'm not going to tell nobody. I own my home, but I see different places that I look around on my block, and there's 20, 30 people walking up in there, Brandon. All the time.
What they look like? They BIPOC?
I ain't getting into that, Brandon. I'm just saying. I see people walking in and out of houses, sleeping. I see that is a real thing. But the blessing is that somebody has a property to house. Right. That's the blessing. So somebody in your particular family, or you might have to be the one to come together with a plan or shift if you have healthy relationships with family members around you to say, this is what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to hunker down. We're going to have to hunker down. And Kai made a great point. These are the conversations that we have to have. If you're not letting people in your lunchbox monetarily, you can't be mad if they don't help you. Not only do they don't help you, but you're afraid. You don't even want to talk to other people that have more than you. But guess what you need to do? Talk to other people that have more than you, and guess what they'll tell you to do? They're gonna start. That's what my buddy did. Brandon, we did this episode a while ago. He said, "You're too smart to be this broke. You don't have 6 months worth of savings. You need to start to make more money. You need to get your credit together. All these good things that I knew about that I wasn't executing. But in order for me to have that conversation, I had to get this and write it down. And that was the best, most painful thing that I ever had to do, because I couldn't lie to myself, because numbers don't lie. Okay, I'm this much in debt. This is how much I earn. This is what. And then once you do that, it's like, okay, now the truth is out there. You're not balling on Instagram. You're going to DR. You're borrowing your mama's car. You don't drive that. This is foolishness. And nobody wants to talk. Like Black America, it's a pet peeve of mine, and I talk to my community because the statistics don't add up to the result.
Right.
If you start, there's an article, and I'm not teasing. I'm not teasing Black women, but there was an article that said a Black woman in Detroit had a negative net worth between the ages, I think, of 25 and 35 of like -$5. How is that queen? How is that king? There is an article. There's something out there. I wish we should have pulled it. There's an article talking about Skid Row in Los Angeles and the level of Black male homelessness out there. It is like an epidemic that we're not balling out of control collectively. We're not. So these are things that we need to talk about, because a lot of our family members are in these positions, but we're too scared to talk about it because we want to try to maintain some level of where we are in society. Right now, guess what? We're down. We got to get up. We're down, and we got to get up collectively.
Could I add to that, Aaron? I think another thing is too, when we're looking at for our community, more of us are having, we may be in a position which we're a caregiver for somebody else, or somebody else may depend upon us financially. Many times in our community, instead of maybe the previous generation saying, I'm gonna give you this down payment for your house, or I'm gonna pay off your student loans. Oftentimes we are not getting that. We are taking on student loans, and then we're also helping maybe mom, auntie, uncle, whoever pay a cell phone bill, maybe spot them a couple dollars for rent or something like that. So that's money that's coming out of one household that things may be tight, going into another. So then how can that, let's say someone in our generation, how are they able to then prepare their future children for what's coming if they're still paying helping mom pay bills, helping dad pay bills, helping Pookie out because he's getting in trouble again. So again, we have to be honest and say, okay, in this paradigm shift that we're going through within America, what happens when people start saying no? I can't help you pay rent this week. Right. I can't help you pay that cell phone bill. I can't go buy your groceries. I mean, this is real what we're talking about. And so you may have family members that may say, well, how come you're not going to help your mama? How come you're not helping your dad out? So once again, we have to really be honest about where we are economically in this country and how we survive. And I know we're going to be talking about some preparations that we can do to prepare for what's coming. But this is real talk tonight.
Absolutely. VC, that's a fact. 10 people be joining one, like literally. And we don't talk about it. I've had friends that have hit me up and asked for resources. I have a buddy that's given out thousands of dollars in resources. And when you start to look at it collectively, you realize, man, there are portions of our community that not only are struggling, but also may not have the skills. And that's something that we don't really talk about either, because it's a changing workplace dynamic too. It's a changing workplace dynamic. And some of those skills that, like I talked about in the beginning, some of those skills that we discussed in the beginning that were working, those skills don't work 40 years ago. And we've got to make that shift.
Yeah. Let's dive into that a little bit more. But before we do that, I might have found the article that you were referencing. And I think it's important. I skimmed through it real quick. I think it's very important to highlight a piece of this. So it says, a sea of Black men's faces. LA's Black homelessness crisis. Now, we've heard of Skid Row. Many people are familiar with Skid Row. It's the infamous homeless, miles of homelessness that spreads even downtown of LA that they deal with. And if we're going to be quite frank and very honest, there's Skid Rows all across this country.
Absolutely.
In most of your major cities where the percentage of black people, I would say, is over 4 or 5%. You're going to see Skid Row. You're going to see black men out on the streets. Now, in this article, there's two things that I want to talk about, actually. This first quote is from Melina Abdullah. She's the co-founder and the chapter of Black Lives Matter, LA chapter of Black Lives Matter. And she's outraged over the state of black homelessness. And she says, I feel a tremendous amount of sadness when I think about how we came here as enslaved people and how they attempted to dehumanize us then. Abdullah said, it's the same process of dehumanization that they would treat dogs better than they treat black people who are living unhoused.
I know where you're going, Brandon. I know where you're going. I know where you're going. I know where you're going.
All right. Well, you take us there instead of me, so I don't get canceled.
No. Well, the first thing is if you go back to that quote. No, I'm not mincing no words. If you go back to that quote, the name of the article is A Sea of Black Men's Faces. That's the name of the article. There's nothing about her statement that talks about black men.
But if you read between the lines,
nothing about black men.
Exactly. But let's not go too deep down the rabbit hole. Go ahead, Kai. Happy.
You struck a nerve.
Now let's scroll down a little bit more. Now again, this is very interesting. This is why understanding statistics is very important, because when you see numbers and you can start to compare and contrast what this means, right, it really highlights how big issues are. So black people are 8% of LA's population, which is really low if you think about it. I thought it would be a little higher than that for LA. Mm-hmm. But they represent 34% of the people experiencing homelessness, according to a 2020 count by the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. The number of unhoused black people could rise when the LAHSA conducts its 22 count. So they're predicting that this 34% is even higher. Now let's say it rose 10%, right? Not too big, but that's 44% of the black people who, of the 8% who live in LA. That's almost half of the black people in LA are homeless. I mean, it's just like, that's nuts. But we don't even think of that. Like 34% is insane. Like that's almost a third. It is a third. It's a third of your population's homeless. Like what? And I guarantee if you break that down by gender, that 34%, I'm willing to bet 70% or 75% are males. And it's that's scary. And I know LA is expensive to live in, but damn, man, like that's scary. That's scary.
Yeah, and I also reference another article. We might try to squeeze it in before we leave, but it was on Daily Mail. Shout out to Daily Mail. So sometimes Daily Mail has better content than some people. Because when I wanted to find out about the shooters and stuff like that, I went right to Daily Mail. Yeah. But they had an article talking about outside of Disneyland, there are rows of vans and cars of people that are just living there homeless. Yeah. And it says I think it was the Magic Kingdom now becomes like Death Kingdom or something like that. And I mean, it's just thousands of people living in their vehicles. Like, and this is what America and what people are not seeing is that there's this homeless rise in epidemic. And there's this, and you're going to start to, Brandon, talk about, we're going to start to see all this different behavior, and we have to be aware of it. I think this is a really good segue for Brandon, for you to actually go to the next one, to where we talk about specifically, it is, overvalued housing market. And that's really, really important. So, and I want you to go down. So we're in a historically overvalued housing market, which means that basically when people are thinking about overvalued, that just means that properties are overinflated in reference to value. You know, something that 3 years ago might have cost $200,000 might cost $300,000 today. But I want you to scroll down a little bit, Brandon, because they have a map. And at first, when I looked at this map, I was trying to break down because the purple represents overvalued and the yellow represents just how much is not valued. But I want you to go to, see if you can find Mississippi on there. Mississippi. Jackson, Mississippi. Now, that says 0, and this is important. That says 0, which means it's not overvalued, it's not undervalued, but did they get any appreciation? And that is a black space, and I missed that when I was looking at it, because if something is overvalued, at least you did get a level of appreciation and a level of gain, which means that I was trying to sell something that's a little bit inflated, but when it comes down, it'll be a little bit more stagnant. But some of these places in a lot of black spaces, Brandon, they saw no level of appreciation at all, which means that we're living in areas that are not appreciating and not gaining any wealth. And then you go to places where you look like Florida, where a lot of people are actually going and moving from northern states, or they're going down there to retire because you have low state income taxes, things of that nature. They're overpopulated. I've talked to people, white, Indian, non-black people, all the time, and they are going to Florida and they are pouring money into those places, literally moving to those places, even though the values are higher. It's an economic game that we have to get involved in, because we can't have zero growth. And that's a huge issue. You know, I'd rather take a little overinflation than none. And so this is just, you can click on this and say where your regional home prices are overvalued by. I think we talked about this before. The average property cost, I think in the state of California, no, I think in LA, it's like $750,000. And then go back to the article Brandon just talked about, where 34% of the people in LA that are homeless are black. The numbers, folks, the numbers are not, this is not a TV show. This is real. And I think the federal government, and I think media, and I'll let you guys go, but I think they've done a masterful Academy Award-winning job of making people not be aware of exactly what is happening here. Because when I saw that, Brandon, I ain't gonna lie, I didn't get all the way deep into it, but 34%, that what? And majority black males. Majority black males. Think about that. All right, let me shut up, y'all. Go ahead.
No, this is so important in this pulling up this graph and having this conversation tonight. This is what Black America looks like. And I think we've been so distracted by celebrities walking around with their designer suits, talking about Black excellence, going to brunches and everything else. Meanwhile, we're out here homeless and can't feed our family. Like, I'm trying to be measured, but this enrages me, because then it's like, if we have that percentage of our Black men homeless, like, talk about, like, there's no family unit at all. You can't have a family unit with this type of homelessness.
No.
So what type of foundation do we even have for our children? But we're so wrapped up in this celebrityism, trying to look like whoever the next artist is, and we're losing exactly what we need to be focusing on. What are we creating for future generations? Jay-Z, Diddy, whoever else you want to name, they're not worried about this.
They're not worried about this?
This isn't affecting them.
No, I'm just asking. I think
Jay-Z and Will Smith are supposed to be building some type of like some type of low income housing unit or something for the Black community. What?
We have, but this is the whole point of this content. We have a better chance, Brandon, myself, and you have a better chance of affecting your family directly in immediate decisions making, in immediate decisions that you can make, than a celebrity. And that's the whole point of us doing this content. Because I think people forget, because everybody even looks at Black homelessness like, well, how did it happen? Most people in this country live check to check. You are one check away from being homeless in the first place. And we're going to talk about that in the solutions at the end, but it doesn't take that. I mean, you think about this rising rents, Kai, it doesn't take that much. Somebody loses a job, 2 months later, where are you going to rent at?
Yeah, we're
So
already on the margins.
yeah, you're already on the margin. That's why, before we get to the end, we're going to talk about solutions, and also we're going to talk about how you can even take advantage, because even though some of these numbers are bad, if you're an owner, if you're an investor, you can actually not only help yourself, but you can also help your community by putting yourself in position financially. So this is really, really important to get to.
One last thing.
No, go ahead, Kai. You're good.
So I think looking at this diagram and the data that you provided, I want everyone to also look and see, are these in states that are heavily Democratic? And I say that because our votes are going to politicians who are of the Democratic Party, and they come into our communities and demand that we vote for them. You should not vote for anyone who is leaving your community like this. What have they done to deserve? Vote is an exchange. I'm not going to vote for you to just come make me feel good, then leave and not provide anything directly that impacts the life of my community and my family. The Democratic committee or party, I should say, they continue to do the same thing over and over again with us. They play to our emotions. Meanwhile, we're homeless, don't have money to feed our kids, can barely afford gas to go to work, but yet we're supposed to continuously vote for them. Absolutely not.
I agree.
We have to begin to make some changes with. There's no way that they should be able to come into our communities, demand vote. Al Sharpton, Tamika Mallory, all these people that think that they can just come to us, and bring some type of celebrity or do whatever to make us feel good, have a little skating party, whatever it is that plays to that emotion. Meanwhile, you have no place to live. How do you go to a community and demand your vote when you are homeless? I think Maxine Waters was at a rally.
She was
this
up
is
here.
A few months back.
She was up here.
Did you see what she was? And she told the people there, okay, everybody, you got to go home now, because people are getting kind of worked up about the homeless situation. I think it was in her district. And
that was
people yelling out, like, we don't have a home. We're homeless. Don't you realize?
Yeah, she was in the homeless encampment. Yes,
out of touch. How do you leave your district? I'm sorry. Like, in your district, and you're telling people to go home, and they're like, that's what we're trying to tell you, is we don't have a home. And she's like, oh, all right, well, settle down. You need to not be in office if you don't even realize who the constituency that you're speaking to. And I'm done.
No, but you bring up a good point. And yeah, that was in LA. When she was here, she was pretty much riling up the protesters to burn down the Twin Cities. That was 2 years ago. But you're right. And one thing that I would add to what you were saying is it's not even the state government. It's really people's local government, because a lot of times these cities that have a lot more of the electoral votes, they're really liberal and blue, but then the rest of the state isn't. But since those inner city areas hold a lot of democratic power, then what ends up happening is a lot of the political sway goes that way. So even if you are someone who's looking at your state, I would say look at the city or the closest city that you live to, because those folks are making the policies and decisions that are affecting your life more directly than national politics are. And for some reason, Black folks, we just do not give a damn about local politics. We just don't care until something bad happens. And then we'll get somewhat riled up. But man, we really have to start thinking better politically on a local level, because this voting Democrat all the way down the line stuff has not worked at all. And I'm not saying just go and be a Republican. I'm just saying use some logic and vote some interest, because at this point in time in the game, there's no point in even. I mean, I think there is a point of voting, but what's the point if you're always going to give the same people the vote? Like you're not even engaged in the political piece. You're just a pawn, sadly.
Yeah, local is important, to be involved locally with your local political office. And also, once you begin to be involved locally and you develop that relationship with your local politicians, working together with your community, you can then put pressure on your local politicians which then they're going to say, okay, listen, for the folks that are in the state level, listen, I'm getting pressure from my constituency, you guys, and it just starts to go up that way. You're right. You can't start with Congress and work down. You have to start with locally and work up from there. But this is inexcusable. We just sent how much money to Ukraine? I mean,
a couple billion.
A billy. So, man. Yeah. So Brandon, one more.
Yeah.
So let's go to the one that because we're just making Kai angry. I figured we're just gonna keep on to make Kai angry because Kai be rolling. Buying a home is the gateway to the American dream, but it leaves Black families behind. All right. So this is a pet peeve, but I want you to scroll down because obviously everybody talks about the wealth gap and these statistics. Go back up, Brandon, real quick. Go back up. Actually, no, scroll down. You had it right. Go right there. Now, this is a pet peeve. There have been all these studies. Duke University did a study and all this other kind of stuff. But I want people to think about education, and I want people to think about housing. Only 44% of Black families in the U.S. own the home they live in, according to a new real estate for brokerage firm Redfin. That is significantly less than the proportion of white families who own their home, which came in at 74%. 75% of white families own their property, which means that 44%, Brandon, and you help me with the numbers, if Black families are not only not owning their home, they're also going to that number that we looked at to where they have homelessness as well. So not only are you not owning, you don't even have, we don't have established properties. And people are going to say, Aaron, it's because of redlining. It's because of racial discrimination. Absolutely. This is economic war. You are correct. That you're right. That's what happened. That goes back to the example from the beginning I talked about with that Black family. Owning it and keep it. I don't care if it is worth $5,000. You buy it and you keep it. We have to figure out ways to fight this. Everybody goes to the numbers. There's not a program. They're not going to get a reparation. You're not going to get any of that. Some of this has to become very strategic in what Black families do. Now I'm going to hop on another soapbox that nobody likes to talk about, but we talked about it a few weeks ago. Healthy relationships. How can people partner up? What can you do? If you have a husband and a wife, if you have a wife and a wife, you got a guy. I don't care what it looks like at this particular point for some people. But if you know that this is where home prices are coming in, hedge funds and large institutions are coming into these neighborhoods and buying up properties in bulk to rent them back to you to raise the rent. Let me say that one more time. Large institutions are coming into your neighborhoods to buy those houses and rent them back to you. If you have an opportunity to purchase the asset, you buy it then. You don't control interest rates. You don't control inflation. You don't control anything. But you do control if you can qualify for a mortgage and when you decide to buy. Those are the two things you can control. And we've got to start to focus on that because we'll look at it and say, well, I don't know if I can buy. There are programs out there. I know some of these neighborhoods. There are people. There's still rural development. There's all these different places where you can buy this FHA, low down payments. There's a million things to do. We just got to get creative on the financing. But I want to just show people that this is not going to get any, this gap is going to continue to get wide. And shout out to VC, highlight that comment. All the people from LA with money are moving here to Dallas and they buy a larger home that they cannot afford in California. And guess what they're going to do when they can't buy it in Dallas? They're going to go to Minnesota. Guess what they're going when they can't go to Minnesota? They're going to go to Charlotte. They're going to go to Philly because they have resources. It's economic warfare, whether we like it or not. And this is staggering when you think about it, because our home ownership rates were higher years ago, but they still weren't the way that they're supposed to be. Go ahead, Brandon.
I really just have a question. I'm looking at that third paragraph on the screen where it says Black families are at an unfair financial disadvantage due to the legacy of racism and discrimination that has caused several generations to miss out on building wealth through home ownership. how do we combat that? Because I think what ends up happening for most of us is we'll read something like that and we'll give up. We'll just say, see, white supremacy is keeping us down. You know, we can't do nothing. Redlining, subprime mortgages, the white man's boot's always been on our neck. Can we do anything? You know, it's 2022. You know, are those gatekeepers still there? Like, what's the opportunity for us, if there is one?
No, that's a great question. The first thing is truth be told, like people like myself and other mortgage and Black professionals that are in the business to talk about the things that we know. We know that there are programs available, and we know that there are areas available to where you can purchase properties. We know that there's programs out there to where people can you can get a gift from a friend or a family member. You can have a number of people on a mortgage application. There's first-time homebuyer programs. There's a million ways to combat this. The problem is getting the people. Talk to my young people, getting them out the gate without having bad credit, with having a decent income, with partnering in healthy relationships. And I would even say, Brandon, getting them in therapy a little bit earlier so their minds are not that clouded. So when it comes time to make financial decisions, they're not making them out of stress, anger, or trauma. And so then because I think too many of us are waiting a long time and we're not prepared early financially. And that's the difference with a lot of people. You know, I actually have somebody that I'm very familiar with that told me, and I quote, "It's not a good idea for you to pay for your children's education because you're hindering them." Let me explain something to people what I see. When I go to these places, Brandon, and I see all these white children, all their parents are paying for their education. They're doing both. They're paying for education and they're creating wealth. They do both. It's not one or the other. But we have such a scarcity mentality that we think we can't do one or the other. If you be blessed financially, it's your job to do something for people that you don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna have grandbabies. I might be doing something for somebody that I've never seen before. But that's the point. We are so and that's what this system has really done to us. We've become so self-centered. We can't even think beyond ourselves.
Right.
We can't even think beyond ourselves. But you have other family members that in other cultures, regardless, yes, did they do it? Absolutely. Did they mistreat you? Absolutely. But they're thinking about themselves. That's the point. They are thinking about themselves. We're thinking about what they did. They're thinking about, no, I'm trying to maintain this thing. It's the same principle. Do for self. And so it's one family at a time. So, Brandon, we can combat that, but just on a basic level, you have to, first of all, think that you can compete. And you have to value what you have. I may even go back to the Dr. Welsing basic stops. You know, you want to know things you can do to value, to make your real estate in your area go back up in value? Pick up the damn trash. Pick up your own trash. You can literally go to Mr. Fuller's 10 stops, every single one of them, and that would solve every problem in the community like today.
Are you saying that we can get rid of gentrification but with our behavior? Is that what you're saying?
Now, here's let me answer that real quick before we go on. Let me answer that real quick. Is there still going to be a fight? Absolutely, but you're not surprised that there's a fight. That's the point. See, sometimes we just get punched and we don't know it's coming. Nah, we know it's coming. We know this is what you do. We know even if you try to change the laws, you have to be a step above, you know? And so it's like Mr. Fuller says, and he's so right. If it can't be solved, what are we doing? Why are we wasting our time? I could be over there with Kyle's husband eating some of that okra. Brandon could be frying some chicken. We are just wasting time. We wasted time. If we can't solve these problems, why are we doing this? Go back. Let's start, Brandon. Oh, we went in another direction, but this is wonderful. Stop snitching. Stop name calling. Shade room will be shut down tomorrow. Stop cursing. Stop gossiping. Stop being discourteous. Stop stealing.
YouTube channels would come down for the stop gossiping.
Oh yeah, it's over. It's over. Actually, the whole United States economy would fall tomorrow. Stop robbing. Stop fighting. Stop killing. Stop squabbling. Like literally. But that creates a level of focus. It just creates a level of focus. So I didn't mean to get on a rant, y'all, but like that's where we are. That's where we are. But we are not going to just rant and put on our kente cloth and be like, woe is me. We are going to start with some solutions. So, Brandon, let's go to that one. How to budget expenses during high inflation period. So let's get them some solutions before we get out of here. All right. So the first thing is, this is a quick teaching lesson too for people. You should look at your own personal finance as an incorporation. I don't care if you have a job, and I don't care if you're Brandon. I don't care if you're like Brandon and Kai, y'all balling out of control. Y'all got yoga studios over here. You're executive director. I don't care if you're balling out of control or you work at the 7-Eleven. Whatever goes into your pocket, you are your own personal corporation. What goes in and what goes out, that's how you have to think of it. So that's number one. So if you are the Jones Incorporated, Kai Incorporated, Aaron Incorporated, do I need to know what's coming in and what's coming out? Don't get focused on what other people are making. What are you making? That's number one. So when we go to this particular article, consolidating debts, when you know that there might be a period, and you have to ask yourself this individually, because I have to do this. If there might be a period to where revenue is down and you might lose a job or things of that nature, you have to get as skinny as possible, which means that you have to reduce the debt. People might say, well, what do you mean by that? There have been layoffs in the tech industry. There have been layoffs in, I think Uber laid off some people. We talked about the mortgage companies and all these things of that nature. Guess what those companies are doing? Getting skinny, cutting the fat. That's why I say treat this like it's your own company. The way that they cut the fat is they cut you. You got to cut the fat by cutting down your debt and your expenses. Just to a job, you're an expense. Let's just call it that. And so if you got an $80,000 salary and they're trying to cut things and they just hired you, they're cutting your fat. So you've got to learn how to consolidate your debts. I tell my clients walk through my door, I say, listen, the ideal situation, if you got to have a car note, you have one, but that's all you need. You don't need all these credit cards. You don't need this. You need that. You need a mortgage and a car note. And I said, if you can live that way, and for some people, that might not be realistic, but if you can, the VC, facts, cut the damn cable off. Hallelujah. But yeah, like just basic things, but you got to cut the fat in an economy like this because every penny counts. Specifically, when your penny is worth less than it was yesterday. Yeah. That's the other problem. If inflation is, they say inflation might even get to 20%. That means that your dollar is only worth 80 cents. So you've got to really, really just think about that. So consolidate debts, and you guys hop in whenever you want to. I still suggest that people invest into their 401ks. You need to figure out, you need to go, shout out to Kai and her husband. They do a great thing on crypto. You need to start thinking about investing in the crypto, contribute to your 401k, learn. There's lots of channels out there. Erica, Earn Your Leisure, start figuring out how to invest smartly, because here's the thing. People make money when things are bad because they're investing in assets that have a possibility to go up. The problem is that if you never have any money to invest and you don't have your savings or your emergency fund, you can't participate in that part of the game. You're just in the savings part. So if the real estate does go on sale, you can't buy it because you don't have any savings. If the stock market does drop, you can't buy it because you don't have any savings. If there's an opportunity for you to get a good crypto that might have a run in the next 10, 15 years, you can't buy it because you don't have any savings, because you don't have a plan. So you have to have a plan, and I'll put it out there. Dave Ramsey talks about this, but 6 months of an emergency fund. And most Americans, they say, don't even have access to $1,000. I want people to think about that. They don't even have access to $1,000. Which means that if your car broke down, I'm not talking about on credit. I'm not talking about getting a payment. I'm talking about don't have $1,000 to your name. That should be goal number one. So y'all, I want y'all to step in, because this is my if y'all, I want y'all to step in if I'm doing something wrong. But yeah, focus on your savings. And then also, man, this goes into what VC talked about. Man, that damn cell phone bill. Y'all don't need to do that much damn talking. cut your house phone, cut the cell phone bill. We gotta get creative. BC, that's facts. That's facts. So there's a lot of ways and a lot of opportunity. So Kai, I want you guys to hop in and give your thoughts on any of this stuff.
No, I think this is so good, and this is advice that you can do. Right? This
Absolutely.
is something that is not practical. This is something that we all can begin to do. Begin to look at areas that we can start to cut back. Look at areas that maybe we can invest. And when you do invest, you want to make sure that that's money that, if there is a dip in the market, that's not going to hurt you. You don't want to put your rent money up
Absolutely.
to invest, but it's money that you can set aside for investment. So these are all small changes that we can do. I'd also like to add, even when you're like going grocery shopping, if you can, however you're budgeting for that, if there's sometimes that you can buy in bulk, just because the price of food is going up. So when you're going over your total budget, is there a way that you can also buy some food in bulk? Because that can also help if you buy items at a certain discounted price, then maybe the money that you would normally go to pay, let's say, to buy higher priced items, maybe you can put that aside, and that can be money that can go into your savings or that you can use as possible investment. So every dollar matters. It's just how you're able to sit down and budget and see where you can start to save some funds.
Mm. What do you both think about financial advisors? I think for a lot of Black folks, we don't utilize people to help us manage our money, but these are folks who professionally, that's what they do. Any thoughts or tips there? And this may be a question more for you. When should Black folks think about using a financial advisor? Is that an appropriate step to take? Who can help us manage our money?
So I'll use, I put myself on a chopping block. So for example, I have a guy that's been advising me for like 3 or 4 years, but his minimum client is like, you don't walk through the door till you got $1 million liquid, period. But he advises me for free.
Ooh.
But the good thing about that is that he taught me the books to read. He taught me the videos to watch. He gave me all the game. And a lot of this stuff is public information. So I think one of the things is that we don't want to admit is that some conversations we're not having because we don't have enough money to be in the game. And that hurts a lot of people. That hurts. However, if you build a cash reserve amount, you'll start to notice that you'll get certain phone calls. You'll have different conversations. You'll be in different rooms. But it's really because you exhibited the level of behavior that it takes for you to start to investing in the first place. So somebody, like, listen, I've seen this happen all the time. Somebody gets a windfall of money, but they're not good with their credit. They don't budget well, but they just got a windfall of money. Oh, what do I invest it in? You're probably going to lose that money because you don't just have the basic mental aptitude in some ways to just say, okay, I'm just going to sit with this and let it build. Because even in the stock market or crypto or anything that people are thinking about in business in general, you have influxes and things of that nature. Saving money is the same way. I have to show that I have a level of aptitude to just get to this step. Okay, I was able to save $20,000. Okay, now I think I might be able to risk $1,000 or $2,000. And there are financial advisors out there that'll take that will advise those things. I can't say to talk to one or not. What I am going to say is that there are enough books out there for people to do their own research. You can open up your own mutual fund, your own ETF, and it is free. My 18-year-old son has already done one. My 22-year-old son has already done trading. And it's just basic talk to dad. Here's what you do. So there are some, I do think that to answer your question, I do think financial advisors do have some level of value, but it's different strokes for different folks. And like I said, the more that you start to earn, you want to be in those rooms because I want to talk to the guy that learned how to manage somebody that has a $5 or $10 million portfolio. I want to talk to him. I don't want to talk to the guy that's managing Keisha's Robinhood account. I don't. So we just got to figure out where we are. But if you got to start with that Robinhood account, you start with that and then build your way up. So hopefully I answered that question.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely gonna need you to do some book reviews or say, hey, this is a book you need to read. This is a video you need to watch. Because I think that there is going to be a huge request for that type of information. But we have to get smarter about how we deal with our paper, man. And we have to take some of the things that we've utilized over time, like our hustle mentality, our thirst for dollars, chasing that paper, and be smart with it. Because at this point in time, you got to be smart with your money, or you're going to take a hard L, like the hardest L of your life. Because this economy, this society is not waiting for Black people to get our shit together. It is not. And if you get left behind this time, welfare ain't gonna save you. This government ain't gonna save you. And if you really that concerned about white supremacy, they ain't thinking about you because they trying to survive too. So it is time to get serious about your paper. Like if you gotta do Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, you gotta restore sneakers, whatever you gotta do. You gotta make leather patches, whatever you gotta do, you gotta get on it because the time is now. Automation is getting quicker and quicker. Man, there's jobs out there, but if you don't got the skill set to do them, it ain't no point. You will be on Skid Row in your own city or town, and that is something I don't want to see. And when you hear 34% of the Black population in LA is homeless, that is an alarm bell. Even though in LA is expensive, that is everywhere. That is scary. Not just for Black men, but for Black women as well, because people get desperate when they're homeless. There's huge mental health issues for a lot of the homelessness, but there are people on the street who don't have mental health issues. They don't have skill sets. They're not literate. They couldn't maintain the housing, and they have no other choice. And I know in these YouTube streets, we see things like van life. You see people trying to make it cute to live out of vans, which for some of them folks, that's fine. But some people, they ain't van lifing because they want to. They ain't got a goddamn choice. They out there for real and trying to get some YouTube coins. So you gotta be smart in today's economy because you will get left behind. Those will be my final thoughts for tonight. Any final thoughts from you, Kai?
Just when I think it was VC had brought up people that were moving from, I think it was like California to other areas. And I was talking to a realtor who's in Florida, and he was talking about the housing, the price of housing in Florida. And he was saying that, that it's just kind of ballooned. And I said, well, where are these people coming from? And again, he said a lot of people are coming from like California and New York just because the prices there are increasing. So they're taking their money to go elsewhere, and they're able to buy a lot of these homes with cash because of what they're selling in places like California. So I asked him, I said, so who's buying the homes in California? And he said it's a lot of foreign money. And I mentioned that because what we're seeing is that a lot of foreign money is coming in and buying up these like multi-million-dollar properties. So I'm not taking away from those other like the hedge funds that are also buying, but we're also seeing a lot of foreign dollars come in. So what does that mean when white America is unable to make these purchases of these homes when typically they were able to, and instead you have foreigners that are coming in and say, oh yeah, we have cash, we can pay for this, no problem. Right. What does that say about the value of the dollar? And what does that say about upper middle class white America? So that was concerning, that him providing that information as far as what white dollars can do. So then of course, when we're seeing articles that Brandon just brought up, and Aaron, what you're talking about, it makes sense because we're starting to see a squeeze in that middle class, in the middle class in America. So of course, we're going to be even doubly affected by what's happening in our country. So just wanted to throw that out there, that we have a lot more foreign investment that is coming in and pouring into this country. And it's just going to continue to squeeze out the folks that are here just trying to make it.
Wow, thank you. Final words from you, Aaron.
I just want to tell people, in the words of Dr. Francis Cresswell, be encouraged. It feels like doom and gloom, but the one thing that typically happens during recessions and economic downturns is that businesses that were never thought of, Uber was thought of in a recession, or all these businesses. So if you got ideas, now's the time to put them out there. It's definitely economic opportunity in any sort of downturn. I think that one thing that I always want to remind people is that you can have, even in your financial life, if you have your debts low, but you're still able to invest and save, even if the income is less, you can still have a good year. And sometimes people don't think about that. Like Apple might have a down year next year, but they're still profitable. You have to ask yourself, am I still profitable in my own personal life? If last year, let's say I made 60,000, but this year I only make 45. But if you don't have any debt, even though things are streamlined a little bit, you're still having a good year. So just be encouraged, take advantage of some of the opportunities that are out there. I think shout out to VC in reference to the book idea. I'm gonna throw a book out there right now. Richest Man in Babylon, Amazon, $2.99 used. Buy it. Easy, quick read. Easy, quick read, but be encouraged. It's not doom and gloom, but we have to be serious about these economic problems. All this balling out of control, that is not what's happening in Black America. We have to be honest about it.
Woo. Well, I think that's going to wrap us up for today. I appreciate both of my co-hosts bringing in all this great financial knowledge. We do have to have these difficult conversations. I know it's rough. You know, Char came in and said, this sounds rough. It is rough because we got to talk about it. Because, it is rough and it's hard out here. And I know there's folks listening who have family members who are at that point or they're on that brink of that point. And like you said, it's one paycheck missed, one opportunity, one failed drug test. It can be anything. And they're out on the streets or they're couch hopping at your house and they're bouncing. And like we talked about earlier, it's way too common in our community where we have multiple different family members really surviving off of one person. That is not going to sustain us moving forward. And if we want to have a Black community, we got to get serious about this stuff because this economy is pushing us away from community. It's really going to make us become individuals and close off because there's so many of us that are struggling. They will gravitate towards the folks who have a little bit more stability and a little bit more quote unquote success, even though I don't like to use that term, but it's the best term to communicate what's happening. And folks are going to close off, man. And the next thing you know, they're going to be called bougie. Oh, you think you better than us? And and it's just going to get toxic because not enough of us are thinking. So this is more of a warning. And hopefully for those folks who did get the message today, they can share it and hopefully it lands with folks so they can start getting things together. The opportunities there. One thing about the internet is it has granted a lot of access to get your stuff together. But if you wait till it's too late, just like hopping on crypto, I don't know, I'm not gonna hop on crypto, but some people waited way too long and they could have came up. And now they're trying to get in the game and now they're like, oh, the market's down and it gets all frustrating. You got to get started today. You got to get on your grind today to make sure you have tomorrow because this society ain't waiting on you. And there ain't the safety nets are almost gone. There ain't nobody else out here to help us. And like Kai just said, we got foreign groups coming in buying property. This game in this United States is about the dollar at the end of the day. So if foreign people can come and buy land in your country, everything's for sale, including you. So on that note, I'm going to wrap it up for today. Y'all, please take care of yourself. This is another installment of the third where we cover this, that, and the third. Be safe, be constructive, and be well. And we'll be back next week. Until then, peace.